Hello, everyone.
Hello, Mr. Campbell.
Hi. I'm in, but my camera won't turn on, which maybe it's a good thing. But
Yes, we sent someone to your house to fix that.
Mr. Sarsfield, are you ready to rock and roll?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, since it's 1:30, as chairman, my name is Ryan Parker. I'm the chair of the Community and Safety Standing Policy Committee. Before we start, I will just read the reconciliation statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Mr. Sarsfield, could you please do a roll call of committee members and as well as members of administration who will be joining us?
Thank you. So in attendance for the policy committee, Councillor Parker.
Here.
Councillor Campbell.
I am here without a camera, apparently.
Councillor Higgin.
Present.
Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
All members of the committee are in attendance. In the council chamber, we have Janessa Brown and myself from the city clerk's office. We also have an attendance, a member of the public, Laurie Hatfield, who has made one of the submissions.
Thank you very much. And I do believe there's also members of council who are more than welcome to join us, and I'm glad you could join us as well. So feel free, if you have questions, feel free just to buzz in. That'd be awesome. Moving right along into the consent agenda, item 2.1, the minutes for the April 8th, 2021 minutes. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes of April 8th, 2021?
I can do that.
Thank you. From Deputy Mayor Campbell. All those in favor? Any against? If I hear nothing against, I'll take it as unanimous. Item number 3, adoption of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda, Mr. Sarsfield, or anyone or members of the committee?
I'm not aware of any.
Oh, perfect. So do we need a motion to adopt the agenda, Mr. Sarsfield?
It would be nice.
Okay, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Higgin.
Okay, Councillor Higgin, thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? And Mr. Sarsfield, that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along. Item number 4, presentations. Mr. Rustamano, am I correct? Am I pronouncing that properly?
Yeah, that was really good, actually.
Well, thank you very much. And you have sent us a submission as well, but you're also asking to make a presentation, which I'm glad you're here, and thank you for making time to present to us today. Please feel free.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me and taking time to read my letter. So as I outlined in that letter, there's currently no bylaw to prevent an excess number of cats in a house. And my neighbor at the Last Chance Cat has abused this to no end. And back in 2013, the house of the original cat ranch burnt down, killing 60 cats and injuring about 30 others. So there's nearly 100 cats in the house back then. And had that been at an actual proper location, it wouldn't have been as bad in the sense if there was a commercial grade sprinkler, right? If this was somewhere on a bay on the north side, if they had the actual facility needed to house this many cats. So that was an issue in itself. And rather than rebuild the house and sell it and move somewhere else, they doubled down and they rebuilt the house, moving all the cats back into it, which is kind of crazy to think about because the house is about the same value as a bay on the north side. So like they had the option to move once already. And because they didn't, this house now located at 3321 6th Avenue South isn't even livable despite being about 5 years old. No one lives in the house. No one could live in the house in its current condition. And in the backyard, they've even gone as far as to fill up the entire backyard with these catios and fill it with these tarps, and it's an absolute eyesore. So that part's a little frustrating. I have already tried to talk it over with my neighbor, and didn't go the greatest, you could say. Instead of responding to my message on Facebook that I very politely sent to their group, they chose not to respond to me, and instead the next time they see me in the front yard, they were yelling at me because I was spraying my weeds. And they're not very easy to reason with in that sense. And I've gone through every city department that you can possibly imagine. And as I already mentioned, there's just no way of preventing this. We have a dog bylaw limiting the number of dogs, but we don't have one for cats. There's no zoning, nothing like that. And so I guess that really is my suggestion out of this today, is implementing a cat bylaw similar to the city of Edmonton, which caps it at 6 cats per household, and some type of zoning bylaw as well that would just prevent this from being a possibility in the first place, because SPCA, for example, can't run in a residential neighborhood, so I don't understand how they can. And yeah, those are really just my suggestions. I'm open to any solution that would have the cat ranch move to a more suitable location, because I think it would be better for everybody. And something to note too is this location is literally right around the corner from the exhibition grounds and Henderson Park. So, I mean, if it can happen here, that somebody's running a cat ranch out, it can clearly happen anywhere in the city, right? So to me, that's why it's not about just solving this issue. It's about preventing it from happening elsewhere as the city grows more and more and more. So, but yeah, that's just to touch on it a little bit, kind of skim over my letter. But yeah, any questions for myself?
Thank you, Mr. Rusumano. Well, obviously, we have Mr. Enns, who's joined us today. He's the Director of Regulatory Services. So obviously, and we also have Mr. Fox. And I would ask that members of the committee or members who are not on the committee to ask questions of either yourself or these people as well. And hopefully we can get some clarification. And thank you for your letter. We do have it on file as well. Councillor Hagan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A question I have for City Manager as designate, probably be Mr. Enns, I would think. But a question I have is, there's a limit of dogs, for example, in a home, and I believe it's 2, if not just a fancier license to get more than 2. I believe that's what it is at. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is there anything out there for cats? Like, if you've got 50, 60, 70 cats in a home, is there anything out there, any bylaw that prevents this many cats being in, or animals in any way, shape, or form, to inhabit a home?
Hi, can everyone see me?
Yep.
Good. No, there is not currently anything that restricts a number of cats that can be at a residence. The bylaw, I think you quoted it correctly. There's a fancier's license that can have up to 4. Interesting point on that. We did bring in a couple times previous, we brought a cat bylaw to City Council. And we requested some funding to go with it, because our experience was when we went to Calgary and Edmonton, some of these other places, that people expect it to be enforced. So we had to get some funding to increase the enforcement and the like. But the one interesting point about those 2 bylaws was that there's a number of groups and individuals who argued successfully to put in a grandfathering clause in both those bylaws, so that any cats that were currently living at the property could remain at the property, even with a limit of 4 cats in the bylaws, as these cats could live there until they passed away. So we did bring this previously to council, didn't pass, but this interesting grandfathering clause is something that I would assume would be brought back up in any type of a new bylaw situation, as there was a number of individuals that have, well, not a ridiculous amount of cats that we're talking about in this particular case. I mean, this is, we all agree this is an outrageous amount of cats to have in one place. But let's say an individual has 7, 8 cats or whatever, they would want those cats to be able to live with them until they passed away, and then we're in compliance with the bylaw. So that was one interesting little hiccup in the 2 bylaws that we brought previously to council.
Thank you, Mr. Enns. And my second question is then, now we have a dog bylaw, and I'm just curious to know with other communities, and I apologize, I should have researched this, as Calgary, Edmonton, do most communities not have cat bylaws and just have dog bylaws? How does that work?
No, some of the older cities, not older cities, sorry, the bigger cities certainly do have cat bylaws. I know that Calgary right now is going through a whole revamp of their bylaw and the responsible pet bylaw, and they're looking at making changes to it. Some of the smaller cities do not have it. In fact, some of the smaller cities have difficulty enforcing their dog bylaws. So fact of bringing in a cat bylaw and they have difficulties not being able to have the resources direct toward the dog bylaws is probably one of the reasons why they don't have cat bylaws. So not every city has one, but there are a number of cities that do, and this matter certainly has been discussed previously, and it's something that we had talked about here Regulatory Service Department in terms of possibly bringing this forward and discussing it in our business planning next year. As Calgary was changing their bylaw, we thought it'd been like a decade since we looked at ours, and maybe it was time to look at it and maybe get some information from the public as well, seeing where they sit in terms of a cat bylaw. But a cat bylaw involves a lot of things, and this particular issue is a very difficult issue, and we have received complaints about this particular issue. The animal shelter has gone out there to see if the cats were properly cared for. The SPCA came from out of town to take a look at it. Our bylaw officers took a look at this property in terms of unsightly premises, and we did not find it to be fitting under that definition. I know that Development Services has been out there and taken a look at it to see whether it falls under the land use bylaw. So the issue of cat bylaw is one issue. The other issue is how do we deal with a situation such as this so that this gentleman does not have to put up with neighbors that may or may not be open to listening to his concerns. It's a difficult one, and I don't know if the cat bylaw is the proper way to do it. I don't know if a land use bylaw amendment or change might be the way to go in this matter, but it's a very interesting little problem, to say the least. And I certainly sympathize with this gentleman, and we have taken a look at it, but at least from our department's perspective, we haven't been able to find anything to go after this particular house against.
Okay. I do have some follow-ups, but I'll hop out, Mr. Chair, and let the others get their questions answered, and I'll pop back in. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess to Josh and to perhaps Mr. Henley or someone, Mr. Enns, just in terms of trying to sort of come to a resolution with the Last Cat Ranch, what can you give me a sense of their justification for what they're doing and how they're doing it, and what kind of their responses to their to Josh, for you, what are they saying to you that say this is important that we have this? So if you could answer that.
Yeah, good question. Basically, they justify everything because it's a good cause, right? And just to clarify, I have a rescue dog and 2 rescue cats myself, so I admire the cause they're going for. I think most people can, and that's basically how they justify it as well. We're non-for-profit. What do you expect us to do? And again, the solution to me is that house, just rough numbers, would sell between a 200 to 240 mark. And you could swap that out for a bay on the north side. They also created the issue themselves, so I don't think that should be the driving factor, because that's going to be what they go on about, is if they're put in a position. Again, it was all preventable. Had they been planning ahead, they would have. This wouldn't be a current day issue. The house isn't livable, right? So I just don't understand how they can keep getting away with it. And that's ultimately what we're here to discuss and try to resolve, is how do we make it so the house is livable, right? I think that's a reasonable thing to expect when you move into a neighborhood, is the houses around you are in livable condition, or no one's living in them, or animals for that sake.
So to Mr. Enns or Mr. Henley, just what sort of discussions have there been, and has there been any kind of an attempt to make a resolution or to go forward and create a better situation? And whoever wants to answer that.
It's Dave Henley here. I think I can take
sure
with that, and then Mr. Enns can follow up if you'd like. I don't have a camera. My apologies. So we've had lots of contact with the Last Chance Cat Ranch from a city's perspective in multiple avenues over the last 15 years. I would say that the city probably doesn't have the most favorable communication with the Last Chance Cat Ranch, and as the gentleman that brought this forward suggests, they really do believe in what they're doing, and they believe that the way they're doing it is a benefit to not only to the cats but to the community as well. And certainly we're not on the same page when it comes to what alternate options they may have. Certainly they were part of the Animal Welfare Committee, and they left the committee based on their differences of opinion with other committee members. So I think it's safe to say that I don't believe at this point in time that we're in a position to leverage a favorable decision with the Last Chance Cat Ranch for them to relocate on their own to a commercial property. And I don't know what the legislation would have to be in place to be able to support having a legal foothold to be able to do that. That's going to be challenging as well.
Yeah, Mr. Enns, did you want to respond as well?
No, I concur with Mr. Henley. We have dealt with the Last Chance Cat Ranch on numerous occasions, and not just on this issue, but other particular issues. And the Animal Welfare Committee was a great way to get some of these groups together and to talk out our issues, and it has worked out quite well. But there's some groups that decided they didn't want to join that, and Last Chance Cat Ranch was one that lasted maybe a year before they decided they wanted to go a different route. And it's a difficult thing because we all agree that the overall work that they're doing is commendable. They're helping out, but it's a difficult thing because I would not want to live next to a house with this many cats, and I'm sure none of you would want to be in this situation. So I can certainly sympathize, but once again, it's finding the right legal methods to do this and to put the proper pressure on it. And obviously negotiations would have been, the best route to see whether or not we can convince them that maybe this is the proper place to do it. But discussions with the animal shelter as well, and because they've dealt with this issue directly as well, and they're not getting any positive feedback in terms of trying to get Last Chance Cat Ranch to reconsider some of their choices.
Thank you for the answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Henley, did you want to add to that?
Thank you. I think it's one thing that's important to note here is there is a difference between this residential property and a cat hoarding situation, right? So I've dealt with both, and this is not that. So the residential property that we're talking about today, it doesn't fall anywhere near the category of a animal hoarding residence or disorder, right? So, and what I mean by the difference of those is this property is maintained, the cats are cared for, they do clean the property up, they've made adjustments to have the cats have as good a residence as possible and maintain the property to a degree that is consistent with the houses in a 1 block radius, aside from the number of cats in the property.
Councillor Hagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question I have, and I guess it's going back to the fact of, and I understand everybody's intentions are fantastic, and I truly believe this when it comes to this particular situation, is that if we don't have this house, there's going to be hundreds of cats out on the streets, and it could be far worse than what it currently is. But I do appreciate what Josh shared about the possibility of a better zoned area, I guess, for this, where they can be cared for. They can, people could go and get human interaction if they wanted it at this location, if there be one. But you know what? I guess that's not for us to tell someone how to run their business. But I am concerned with the location. A question I do have is to Mr. Enns. He had spoke to the cost of enforcement if we were to have a cat bylaw. Now, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that with the dog bylaw, is the cost to run that program, or to not be at a loss, come from ticketing, etc., or is the cost much greater? And I apologize, I should know that, and I just would like you to actually speak to the community about that if you could. Or Mr. Henley, either or. Sorry, I don't know who would be best to answer that.
I could take a crack at it, and if Mr. Henley wants to add anything onto it, he certainly can. I guess the enforcement, when we looked at this the first time, I looked over my notes prior coming here to see, where some of the cost issues came in. We took tours of the city of Calgary and asked for their experience with the cat bylaw and everything else. And this is like the general cat bylaw. This is not talking about this one issue in terms of the hoarding, but this is everything from licensing and the like, right? And Calgary indicated to us that you can't just go ahead and pass a cat bylaw because they had tripled the number of calls overnight, and there's an expectation when you pass this that you're going to solve everyone's problems. The cats that go into someone's flower garden and create a mess, the cat bylaw is passed, and that's going to be changed overnight. The fact that there's a licensing component, individuals thought that that would cover most of the cost, but it doesn't. The dog bite licensing certainly helps some of the costs over at the shelter, but it doesn't cover everything. It's tax supported. And the licensing was a lot more difficult for cats. And I don't know what the most recent numbers are for cats, but back when we were, last time we took a look at this, we took a look at this 2 other times. The dog licensing in Calgary was well past 80, it was close to 90%, and the cat licensing was somewhere in the 30 range. So there was a lot of effort and a lot of patrols had to go into trying to get people to license their cats. Cats are a lot more difficult to collect than dogs in terms of picking them up and the like. So the costs at the time, it was roughly somewhere, it was certainly 6 figures in terms of what we looked at, in terms of what resources we needed out of the shelter, and what kind of enforcement we needed for this cat bylaw. And it certainly did not solve all the issues, and the cities we looked at the time didn't solve all the issues that individuals had with cats. We were directed at the time as well by City Council, last time this came forward, to see what we could do without having a cat bylaw, and that's when we went into doing some other stuff, such as renting out cat traps. We increased the fees of impounded cats, so we couldn't find the individuals. But I mean, if you find someone and it goes to court, I mean, it could take up to a year. But an impound fee, you pay the fee immediately, and you get your dog or your cat out. And there was some other efforts that the city actually did put some money into, such as some spay and neutering of all the animals that go through the animal shelter. The Animal Welfare Committee was another thing that council looked at in terms of trying to help solve the problem. We do have money directed towards feral cat colonies to see if we can control those as well. There's grants handed out through the Animal Welfare Committee to rescue groups as well to take care of animals and to get them spayed and neutered, so it's not a huge problem out on the street. So there was a lot of steps that were taken, and some monies were directed towards the issue of cats. So it wasn't something we just said, well, we're not going to pass a cat bylaw and then we're not going to do anything about it. There was a lot of initiatives taken without a cat bylaw. it might be time for us again to look at it, but it's not a quick fix, and it's something, we'd have to go back to the public to see what they want and see what kind of resources we would need, given what a new bylaw would look like. It's not going to solve this problem immediately, and I could tell you, I'm sure if there was a restriction on the number of cats in a bylaw, and then we went after this particular house with that, we would probably have to still go and get a court order, because I don't think these individuals would just leave the house. I think we'd say, here's what the bylaw is, and they would say, no, we're not gonna listen to you. We'd have to get a court order anyway to get onto the property to deal with the cat. So I think this matter would probably end up in front of the courts in any event. So I'm sorry I'm dragging on here, but I know standing committees are good to talk about these issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's the issue of a cat bylaw is one that definitely needs some monies, and I can't give you an exact number because I haven't looked at it in a while, and we don't know exactly what a cat bylaw would entail. But at the same time, I don't know if that's the quickest route or the most efficient route to deal with this. I mean, back in my own mind, I think maybe land use could take a look at maybe some issues in terms of zoning, but that's not my area of expertise. I don't want to talk about that. So anyway, that long-winded answer, hope gives you some information in terms of the cat bylaw.
No, and I appreciate it. And I see Mr. Henley's got something. And just before Mr. Henley, you pop in there, I know that we all love our animals. I've got 2 dogs, love them to death. And I would hope that if my dog got out, having a license, I would be able to get that animal back. So they'd be able to find who the owner is. And so I'm sure cat owners are the same way, and they would want to have their animals back. I know we saw something on the news here a few weeks ago of someone that lost their cat. It was part of their family. And just through that process is why I thought that a licensing may be beneficial, but I understand that it sounds like it's been before council before and is not been voted in favor of.
No, well, actually, and I missed that because, like I indicated, that we did do a number of things, and one thing we did do as well when we didn't, well, not we, but the previous council didn't pass the last cat bylaw that was presented to it. We do have cat licensing. You'll be happy to know here at the city. It's a one-time payment, and it's a lifetime cat license. And one of the issues that was discussed at the last time this was brought forward was the issue of having a cat's a collar around the neck. A lot of individuals thought that a lot of cats can get that caught around their neck and can get choked, but there are now easy to snap off collars, and so cat licensing is something that we do here in town. It's a voluntary one, and we have used it to get some cats back to their owners. So we do have that as well, but we just don't have mandatory cat licensing that some of the larger cities have.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Enns. And Mr. Henley, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think, Councillor Hagan, I think you identified a few important things, right? So initially, what this is it's not an animal shelter. So this is an animal rescue that functions very different than a publicly or privately funded animal shelter where people come in, they play with the animals, they look at adopting them. And these really aren't feral cats. So a feral cat is something that is wild and isn't a cat. These really are just picks animals that don't have homes, hold on to them for an extended period of time until they can find the right kind of placement. And if they don't find placement for them, they hold on to the animal. Right. So it isn't like an animal shelter in that respect. And and when we talk about bylaws as well, and cat bylaws specifically, they're not all created equal. Right? So certainly one of the most prevalent cat bylaws is in Calgary, and they'll identify how successful their cat bylaw is. They struggle as well. So they don't have a limit on the number of animals that you house in captive control, either dogs or cats.
Well, thank you, Mr. Henley, because I know I was over in China. We went to this cat cafe, and so that's why it kind of sprung into my mind. And it was packed solid. You couldn't hardly get into this place. You had to make reservations. So I just thought, well, maybe there's some way we could do some of that. But again, that's a business proposition that person would have to figure out. But I understand the feral thing, and they're probably not the most tame, so it's a whole other issue. But thank you for that, and I'll step out for now, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, these ones aren't feral cats though. They're not. These aren't wild cats. So
right.
And they hold the rescue determines who gets to own them and who doesn't.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And if I may just add a comment, it's Mike Fox here. In all the municipalities I've worked in, this issue has been present, and some have dealt with it, but the costs do go up immensely, as was mentioned, but don't always resolve the amount of animals in a house. And on this one about if the house is inhabitable, it is quite a lengthy process to prove that and get the court to take action on it, where it is a fee simple lot. And even with bylaws or land use, usually it's hard to deal with something that is already existing, as Dwayne had mentioned. I just thought I'd highlight those few things.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm sympathetic very much so to Mr. Russomanno's issue here. I think we all are. I'm not going to speak on behalf of you, but I can't imagine any of us wanting to have to live beside a house having 100 cats in it, maybe even more. You never know. So I'm looking at. I'm not going to look at this through the eyes of a cat bylaw, because a cat bylaw in regards to regulating how many cats people have, this and that. But this is such an outliner of an issue with having close to 100 cats in a house. Mr. Dalton, can we approach this? And I'm asking you, because you could probably delegate it properly. How can we look at this from a zoning perspective, in that how could we find a way of saying you can't allow this many cats to be in a residential house? Is there a way we can go about that?
I'm not sure if we have, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if we have anybody from Infrastructure Services online today that could speak to that question. And I think it would be important to understand historically, and maybe Mr. Enns would know what has been done or what's been looked at in this regard.
Sorry, I don't know what exact sections of the land use bylaw they went out to take a look at to see whether or not. I know that they've been out there a couple times, Development Services, but sorry, I didn't have a discussion with them in terms of what they were looking for.
Okay.
If I may, we could go away and look at it with Infrastructure Services and bring back a report with options, if that's the wish.
That would be the wish, and we may craft the resolution that way, but I'll entertain more questions right now. But I just want to bring my concern. I'm not looking at this so much in regulating every single house in regards to cat bylaws, because I remember, I think it was Councillor Weddick, that being Councillor Joanne Weddick, who brought the resolution forward back in the day, and it didn't really get a lot of support or momentum, and so it was never really voted on. I think it was just withdrawn. But this is a different issue, I think, in regards to how many cats someone can have to a maximum in a household, and if so, should it be in a household or should it be more of in a commercial or industrial area? That's the angle I'm looking at it from, and hopefully Mr. Fox heard that loud and clear. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee, for allowing us non-committee members to participate. Mr. Russomanno, thank you for bringing it forward. This issue does come up fairly regularly. Usually spring is when it comes up as cats who've been trapped inside all winter are roaming free. I do think we need to at least take a look at our bylaw, and maybe at the committee level is the place to sort of examine it. One of the challenges I've always had without having a bylaw is that it doesn't value cats, if that makes sense. Because we do have the bylaw and we worry about dogs and we are concerned about them, they seem to be valued more, and cats almost seem disposable. If they get picked up and taken to the shelter, you just get another cat. And so I think it's time we look at that place of value on these pets. I just read a study where cats are much happier and safer, obviously, as indoor pets. So I think there's lots of things we could look at. Mr. Rusmano, circling back to, I think what is probably your main concern is Last Chance Cat Ranch, which you obviously live near by, and I know the place quite well. And I'm not sure who can answer this, city manager or any of our regulatory services folks. There isn't a lot that the city, capital C, can do. We've looked under some of our bylaws, some of our land use regulations, etc. But when it gets to a state like this, where a house is uninhabitable, and there are issues there, and I talked about this last chance Cat Ranch came up. Does not Alberta Health Services play a role? Like, if a place is uninhabitable, is there not something they can step in? I know in other cases of hoarding for different areas, they do play a role. They work with some of our local agencies to come in and assess. And I don't know if any of our staff can answer that, or Mr. Rusmano, if you've approached that avenue. If anyone wants to take a stab at that, I'd appreciate it.
This is Mike Fox here. I might be able to say a little bit about it. I have taken that approach on other derelict properties before. It's a very long process, very cumbersome. It's not saying that's impossible. And Alberta might have a little bit slightly different legislation, but there's a building in Kimberley that we were dealing with that took us about 10 years to resolve the issue and move them on. So there is a process, but also what's deemed inhabitable by one is not always from another point of view. So as long as the place is in order, that it has running water, sewer, that if that's being used, is acceptable. It's not about the number of animals. So it's how you define that and how you legally define it. So what are we actually going after them for? If there's people playing with the cats in there, the cats are in good health, they aren't using the washrooms, maybe they, it depends on the definition. So I would just be, as we look into this, we will look at those options and see what those options are, and we can bring some options back to council. But in my experience, it is a very long process when you involve a health agency. I see Dave put up his hand too, so I'll put it off to Mr. Henley.
Dave, I think you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
There we go. I'm talking away and you can hear me. Can't hear me, you can't see me. So what Mr. Fox has identified is very similar to what happens in Alberta. I worked closely with Alberta Health on a number of files. I don't believe this property has been declared unfit for habitation, and that's what it's classified in Alberta as unfit for habitation. I think this is more an instance of choosing not to reside in the residence. When it comes to Alberta Health, Mr. Fox is 100% correct that Alberta Health Services can declare a property unfit for habitation, and then while the owner works through resolution and identifying the deficiencies that would affect the person that's residing in the property. Alberta Health had looked at this a number of years ago, Councillor Wilson, and it wasn't in that category at that time. That doesn't mean that we can't ask them to come back to the table again.
Thanks. Appreciate that, because I do remember bits and pieces of that time. Further question, because I do think perhaps examining a cat bylaw or some type of legislation for our community would be appropriate. I know our twin city, Saint Laurent, has an excellent cat bylaw that they've shared with us in past. Other communities do as well. I'm also wondering, and Josh, trying to help you out here, our unsightly premises bylaw, it didn't trigger with this case. Is that something that we could look at? And I'm loath to say that, because if you looked in my backyard right now as I'm gardening, I might be very unsightly to my neighbors, I'm sure. But I'm wondering if we've looked at strengthening or tweaking our unsightly premises bylaw. And I don't know if Mr. Henley or Mr. Enns or Mr. Fox has comments on that.
And I was just by there yesterday. So I've been by this property days, evenings, weekends, all sorts of time frames. And certainly the property just does not fit those criteria. You know, it really is, it's a newer home. It's in much better condition than it was before it was destroyed by fire, and the yard is in much better condition than it is now. It's maintained. You know, it really isn't that dissimilar, other than having 3 garbage cans and some cat kennels on the outside from all the other properties in the block. It's not a derelict structure or property by any means.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Deputy Mayor Campbell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just throwing it out there to the committee or whoever who wants to respond. Is there wisdom in asking the last chance cat people to come before this committee to give their side of the story? Does anybody think that would be they would be amenable to that? Would this committee want to hear what they have to say? And that's just thrown out to whoever wants to respond.
I can even respond to that, and I can't recall who was.
Ask you, Josh. Yes, please.
Yes. So, I believe it was Steve or Dwayne saying earlier that it's just basically we're not in a favorable position with them. I mean, you can listen to them. It's a big pity story. If you ever follow them on Facebook, every single post is about how they have no money, how they're running this, they're doing all this great stuff. Like I said, when they seen me out in the front yard spraying weeds, their reaction was to yell at me rather than, hey, do you mind not doing that, right? And I'm talking like full of screaming, like accusing me of trying to kill her and harm her cats. Like it was mental. And then even recently, they made a post on Facebook referencing one of the neighbors who was spraying the weeds, which is me. And they reference another neighbor as well, and they talk about a missing cat, and they talk about how this missing cat inevitably met its end because the neighborhood is so unkind, meaning like insinuating that myself or someone else killed a cat because it went missing, right? Which is just like absolutely ludicrous. I've never harmed an animal, right? So I mean, you can listen to them if you want, but I can tell you it's just going to be a big pity story about how they have no money, how are they going to move. And again, I get all that, but the big part of this is like that house, they have an asset. The biggest asset they have is the house, is the shelter. So you want that to survive, right? It will depreciate over time. Like it's not going to handle the wear and tear of these cats. And with that said, if they were just in an industrial bay, like you just think about cleaning, ease of use, that's even a good idea with the more of the business side of it. Can you do a little cat cafe, something like that? But these people don't really think like that. They just think we're doing a good cause and that's all that matters, right? They're not, and we got a spot. Why should we move? But so that's going to be their reaction is who's going to pay for it if we move? And again, they put the burdens on them, in my opinion, because they created the issue.
Okay.
So
Josh, I don't want to put anyone in a position of conflict. I don't want to have pit neighbor against neighbor in a public forum such as this. And so I want to make sure that we have this conversation based around the usage of a building and what's happening within the building. So I can appreciate the frustration, but I just don't want us to use this platform here. He said, as she said. I think it's important, but I understand your frustration. But I just want to make sure you've stated your concern with lots of validity in regards to what is happening, not the personalities, or it just regards to what is happening there. And I think that's what I want to base the conversation around. So to answer Councillor Campbell's, I think our administration can go and get clarification on what's happening there, what's appropriate, so we have facts. I don't want to use this SPC as a platform to point fingers at one another, because I don't think anyone gets anywhere through that. But at the same time, Josh, I also appreciate your frustration of what is occurring there, but just let's look at this from a zoning perspective. That's the most important thing. Thank you. Do you understand what I'm saying, Josh?
Yeah, I see your point. We got to look at it from what's going to fix the issue. So
That's exactly. So Councillor Campbell, I'll take that as a recommendation, but I don't know what we're going to do with that one just yet. Councillor Carlson.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I left my hand in the air. I'm good.
Okay, no problem. Members of the committee, anyone else have any questions? Or you've heard a lot of questions brought up here, Mr. Rusmano. Do you have any questions, or do you need more clarification on what was being said around this table at this time?
No, honestly, like I said, I've been going back and forth with every department in the city, so I'm quite familiar with the fact that this is us trying to find a solution right now, because there currently isn't one. So I'm quite happy with everything in this
So you have no questions of any of the answers that you heard or anything like that?
Well, I guess just what's the next step forward that's going to find a solution? I'm not an expert in the bylaws as to what can fix it. Like, to me, the solution's simple. They should operate somewhere else, but like, what's the step forward that's going to lead us towards that solution, right?
That's a great question, and that goes to the next point. Is we have as SBC, we are representative of council, and we bring recommendations to council. Either it could be option A, option B, option C. It could be anything from referring something to administration for a report back, or we could just take your report and say, hey, thank you very much, have a great day. So maybe we'll get to the point now where we have a resolution in front of us. And I did send an email to our deputy city clerk, and he's written something up, and I'm going to see if there's a sponsor on this resolution. So I'm going to read it out. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation of this information, and further that administration review options regarding land use and regulatory services, bringing back a report to the Standing Policy Committee, that being us, by, now we don't have a date on here, Mr. Enns or Mr. Henley or even Mr. Dalton, what would be an appropriate timeline to come back with some options and a report back to the SBC?
I guess I could handle that one. The one issue is if we're talking about development services, I can't speak on their behalf. So if we're looking at some land use issues and in addition to any of our bylaws, when is the next committee? Do we have one or two committee meetings prior to summer?
Mr. Sarsfield?
The next committee meeting is on June 10th.
An early one. And do we have one in July?
No, and then we have the final one for this particular council is September the 9th.
Okay. So technically we have two options here, two dates. First of all, let's look at the resolution by itself, because if there's no support for the resolution, we shouldn't put a date on it. Is there any member of the committee that would like to sponsor this resolution that's presented in front of us?
Mr. Chair, it's Councillor Higgin here. I had my hand up, but just something similar to this. Let's get some administration work on this, I believe, because I think it's great. Come back with some options. And I think that to those that have heard here, Mr. Dalton, Mr. Fox, Mr. Enns, and Mr. Henley, I think really know what this committee is discussing some of the concerns going forward. So I was putting up my hand to actually do a similar resolution as this. So I'd be more than happy to sponsor this and to have it. I guess the biggest thing is to Mr. Dalton, it may be a little quick for June 10th. Is it something that we look at? Is it having to wait till September? I would love to see a June response back, but I understand time commitments. So if you can maybe speak to that.
Yes, thanks. I would recommend the September date.
And I'd be willing to support that, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Morrow?
Thanks,
you had your hand up.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just thinking, Maybe a couple questions first to
Please do.
Josh. Josh, you indicated that you've been to several different departments in the city, and it seems like you have some frustrations because obviously nothing's been done to your satisfaction. So maybe can you just tell me what is it that you found? And I'm not trying to say that the administration has done this to you, but for lack of better terms, what is it that you found that you'd like to see changed that maybe are roadblocks into attempting to get to where you want to get?
I guess just the length of time. Like, I didn't personally know about this committee until this Mr. Higgin suggested it recently to me, and that would have been something that would have been a lot less of a roadblock had I just known to come here initially. Because yeah, Joe, obviously we dealt with a different issue, bylaw issue, that I just had to deal with you, and then it was fixed within a few months. So I kind of thought that's how this one was going to go too. But yeah, that was my biggest roadblock. Is just like nobody knows. I get passed up to a manager, and then they don't have an answer. Then I call everybody else, and again, nothing. Right. So yeah, that was like I say.
Thanks for that. And the reason I asked that is because my sense, my initial gut sense tells me that we're just going to delay this now. You've heard till September, then you're going to get a new council. So you'll be sitting doing this a year from now, which I'm not proud of that. So hopefully we can do something different that we don't have to wait that long. And that leads to my second question then. Can this committee of four, can we push an agenda item and send our city staff down the path to do whatever it is that we want? Doesn't the committees have to report to council, and then council would direct administration? Because I see this as four of us, the committee, sending the administration on a path that maybe our five colleagues see it differently or don't even want to go down that path. So that's just a thought. So can somebody help me out here? Are we able to do that as a committee?
I think what we could do is refer this to council right now, to have council endorse administration coming back to the report to council versus the SPC. So we could ask this committee to ask council to ask administration to come back to the report to a council meeting with possible options, kind of skipping one process of coming back to committee, since committee won't be meeting again only twice up to before the end of this term. So we could just ask, this resolution to state that we ask council to recommend to our administration to come back with options in regards to this issue. Does that make sense?
No, I just want to make sure. So if this committee makes a recommendation, request to administration to go off and do whatever they need to do, and then come back, it has to come back to this committee. Does it not?
We could ask for it to come back to council.
Well, I want to know the process for sure.
Okay,
That's
thank
what I'm
you.
trying to get at. I'm trying to understand the process.
Not Mr. Enns, rather Mr. Sarsfield.
So the role of the Standing Policy Committee is to vent items and look at options. And in this particular case, since there is no identified option, that's why the original draft resolution was to come back to this committee to continue to vent whatever the report may be, and then pass on a recommendation, including all options, to City Council. So it was just, again, to make sure at the Standing Policy Committee level that there is sufficient public participation with any specific issue.
Okay, and here's where I'm going with this. Obviously I'm trying to find a way to make this process quicker. So technically, we can do nothing as this committee today, just accept Josh's presentation, receive it and file. But any one of us, it doesn't even have to be anybody in this committee, could get onto the agenda, could review committee and put in a resolution or suggest that we have this particular, put in a resolution that will show up at a council meeting. So that will, I think, speed up the process. I know it's kind of playing the game and trying to go around the process, but why don't we just do that? Why doesn't
any member of
we just-
council? Any member of council can do that, Councilor Morrow. You have all the
Right.
right to do that, and
And-
you're more. If you find that this should be expedited rather, which I agree with, I think that's the proper process. And there's nothing wrong with that, is there, Mr. Sarsfield?
No, but if you wish to have options rather than just another presentation, that's why we added in the second clause. So at least that work gets started. And whether you direct it to come back to this committee or to council, that's your choice.
Understood. Thank you.
Councilor Carlson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just so that we're clear, the committee can direct work be done, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. So it could be done. And further to that, we've done it in other committees I'm on. There's nothing limiting the amount of committee meetings, correct? If the committee said they wanted to work on something, they can schedule further meetings?
They could do that. It would require an amendment to the council calendar. So if you think that you're going to have a report or wish to study this further or report back in sometime during the summer, we could do that.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to figure out if there's any other options, hearing what I'm hearing about time delay. I think it'll be speedier, just my 2 cents, to be done in committee than to send it to council. I think if it goes to council, it'll probably be referred to administration, and that won't be for 3 weeks. So just my 2 cents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Thank you. Councilor Higgin?
Yes, actually, most of it's been discussed, and I just want to touch base on a couple of things here. I know Councilor Morrow, I'm the same way. I'd like this expedited, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair. And if that's the case, any councillor can bring that forward to council. But the other option is we're scheduled meetings, but we can meet, as Councillor Carlson indicated, we can have another meeting in July. I mean, we're off for SPCs during July and August, but I'm quite fine that, and with the will of the rest of the committee, that we have another meeting and get this done sooner than later. So I guess 2 different options, and I guess I would like to send out to the rest of the committee is, I mean, I'm willing to bring something forward to council just as a council resolution. I'm sure Councillor Morrow had indicated as well that maybe that's could be a quicker option. And if not, you know, we meet together as this committee. If we're able to make a decision with this committee without it going to council, I would just like it done sooner than later. September seems quite a ways away. I know June may be a little too quick for having our administration to get information back, but maybe there's a July date and it's something to look at. So I'm just to get some, you know, input from the rest of the members, just getting something done a little quicker than later.
Deputy Mayor Campbell?
Yeah, I'm just I'm good with that. Getting it done sooner. That would I have no problem with adding another meeting in July. That's my 3 cents worth.
And my last question would be, if obviously we're all in agreement there, to Mr. Dalton, is that sufficient time?
Mr. Chair, unless I hear anything different from Mr. Fox or Mr. Enns, that sounds reasonable.
Thank you. I want to just make sure we're respectful of your guys' workload as well. So thank you. So it's hearing that. So Councillor Higgin, since you want to sponsor the resolution, do you want to put a date of, we don't really have a date for July picked yet. So,
well, the other thing is we would have to amend the calendar. So do I have to do a resolution to amend the calendar, or do you know what? I'm just thinking we should just bring this to council. I think that I'm prepared, or Councillor Moore or any other councillor, just to bring this forward to council. And so maybe I would retract that, and in council we could have that same resolution we'd craft to have administration come back, and if it's July, and then I know that we don't have to set up another meeting. Sorry, okay. That's a little cumbersome, but
no, it's not cumbersome at all. But we got to make sure we get closure on this end. So then the resolution will be that we accept the report, the original resolution, and then we leave it in the hands of what you're planning to do, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So, all right. So I'm going to get back in my resolutions here. You can just hold on for a sec here.
And Mr. Sarsfield, if you can put that on the screen, or I think it's Janessa that it's just.
Yeah. So if the committee wished, they could add another clause which says, and further that an additional community safety meeting be scheduled, be added to the council calendar for July 2021. And then we use whatever that date is for the second as well. So
Okay.
And then that gets the work started.
Right.
So the second clause would say July 31st, because I'm not sure what the date would be at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
So no later than July 31st.
Yeah,
Correct.
I like that no later, because I'd like
Sure.
to get some sooner if we could, depending on administration.
So
All right.
if I could just correct that, Janessa, further be recommended to City Council, the third clause. Thanks.
And with this, just to be sure, Mr. Chair or Mr. Sarsfield, this is kind of a backup. And so if a resolution is brought forward to council, then we could just, this particular resolution would be null and void, I would take it. Is that correct?
Well, whatever passes today will go on the consent agenda for the next meeting. So
Okay.
This action, if you pass it here, it will be a recommendation and the report will go to City Council. So if there was a further resolution that was proposed by a councillor at a council meeting, it would be in addition to this step or a different direction if they so wish.
Deputy Mayor Campbell, do you have a question?
Just I don't know if I'm being picky, just, should we specify that this is, options regarding land use and as far as, I don't know how you word it about the number of cats in a house, or do we have to be specific, or is this understood? That's all.
I think it's understood. There's a lot of questions and suggestions brought forward, and I trust their administration heard that loud and clear.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Mr. Question. So,
Mr.
go ahead there, Councillor Hagan.
Sorry, it's looking a little cumbersome, and I'm just wondering. I'm sorry to my colleagues if this should be receive and file, and a councillor can bring forward this at our.
That's what I was thinking.
Can we just make this as receive and file? We're getting a little confused here, I think. And then I know I will, if somebody else does not, I will bring one forward to council, a resolution. So let's just receive and file. If I guess it's my resolution, I'd like to change that to just receive and file.
Okay, so I have so first, okay, let's just go back here. So let's pretend this one's not even in front of us. We've got a resolution by Councillor Hagan. Be it resolved, the cap by public submission, be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information.
Thank you. I'm sorry to do this to everyone, but I think this would be a lot easier. And if it's okay with my colleagues, if that sounds okay, I think that would be the best way.
Noting that Josh has heard what has been said, and he may have an expectation. So that, but at the same time, until something is brought forward at a council meeting, the 4.1 will be the resolution on the books. I have a Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a word of caution to members of the committee. The SPCs are where a lot of this work is supposed to be done, or council envisioned a lot of this investigation and bringing forward options, etc., is to be done. Just a word of caution, council may refer this back to the committee, which may end up taking longer than we're all hoping for. Just a word of caution there, that it could come forward to council and council say, excellent, refer to the committee to bring us options. I think Mr. Sarsfield was trying to put in something to say, at least this gets some of the work started. I would, just in essence of time, I just want to put that forward. Thanks.
Councillor Higgin? And just a second, Councillor Higgin, Mr. Fox, did you want to say something before then?
Yeah, I just want to confirm something with Mr. Sarsfield. It would be on the consent agenda for the June 1st council meeting, would it not?
It would not. It wouldn't make that deadline. The agenda's already.
Also, it would go to the next one. So in 3 weeks. Okay,
June,
I understand then.
Yeah, it would go to June 15th.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry.
Councillor Higgin?
I was just going to say, unless there is a resolution that's supported by 2/3, I believe, if it was sent out past the agenda review, is that correct, or no, Mr. Sarsfield?
Well, the agenda review committee is already, I believe they've already reviewed the agenda for June 1st. I'm not sure, I'm not on that committee, but I believe they already have.
Yes, we have.
And it would be it would already be published, actually.
All right, thank you. I'm just timelines. So, all right, then I guess we it could be for 3 weeks. That's fine. I still support the resolution that's on the table.
Okay. All right, Councillor Morrow?
Sorry, just further to that point. I mean, we have always had late submissions. The administration has received stuff as late as Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock to add to the agenda. So why couldn't a councillor add to the agenda of June 2nd? I guess the question I'm asking, could Councillor Higgin get this on the agenda for June 2nd? What would stop him from doing that?
So what he would need, if I can answer that question, Mr. Chair, is that he would, when the agenda is presented on June 2nd, what would happen is the chair would ask if there's any additions or deletions or amendments to the agenda, and as described, if it requires more than 2/3 vote, then it could go on. But it wouldn't be published beforehand.
But he could actually sit down with you right after this meeting, craft a resolution or whatever, whoever he wants to sit down with, craft a resolution and get it in to the city clerk's office as a late submission. He could do this. He could do this by 4:30 today. Could he not?
Yeah, it would be as urgent business is how it would have to be described.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is we have done this many, many times where a member of council or anybody comes in with late submissions. Mr. City Manager, I'm really looking for you to maybe step in and guide us again, because I think we're kind of all over the place here. What's your thoughts?
Regarding whether or not it could make the agenda for June the 1st, I defer to what Mr. Sarsfield's saying, and you're right. At any time, a councillor could submit an agenda item, a resolution for consideration by council, and my understanding is the Agenda Review Committee would make the determination as to whether or not that goes forward. I think that's, and as you said, that does happen on a, if not frequent, regular basis. My only observation here is with respect to the timeline. So we're pretty clear from an administration perspective as to what the committee's intent is today. So we will start work on that report. I guess I'm just wondering about what the intent of that resolution would be for the 1st, and if there would be an expectation that we'd be there with the report. That wouldn't, we would not be able to meet that June 1 deadline for a report. But I'm not clear on what the intent.
I think okay, so just so we get some clarification here. So there was never an expectation that a report was going to come back June 1st. It was just the resolution would be on the books for the June 1st meeting to give direction to the administration. That would be the intent, Councillor Higgin. But Councillor Higgin, if you did bring that forward, just so process works here, if you did bring that resolution forward, you would need council to vote for that on Monday, with a certain percentage to agree to put it on the agenda. Am I correct, Mr. Sarsfield?
Other than it'd be Tuesday.
Or Tuesday, rather. Thank you very much. And out of respect to your members of council, the sooner they get it, then they can at least digest it versus getting it over the wall on that day. That's completely up to you, Councillor Higgin.
Absolutely. I'll be doing that. I'll craft that up with the administration if all possible after this, and try to get something out as soon as possible. But yes, I'll bring it forward on Tuesday, and I understand I'll need 2/3, so 6 council members to support in order to take it that day. If not, it would come the following. Thank you.
Or you could at the same time right up the one that you had earlier as the amendment to 4.1 to get the ball rolling. It's completely up to you.
Either way, we have direction. Administration knows it's not direction, but they know what we've discussed here today. So I will bring something forward on Tuesday. I prefer to just leave it as receive as information, and on Tuesday I'll bring something in.
So obviously but when you say bring something, you're not going to just give it to us that day. You'll probably give us a few days to look it over, right?
It will be in advance. That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the clarification, Mr. Sarsfield, as well. Mr. Fox? Your hand's up.
Sorry, it was a hangover hand.
Awesome. All right, so we have the resolution in front of us right now, that being 4.1, be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information. And Councillor Higgin, do you want to speak to it?
No, I'm sorry, we've kind of beat this up pretty hard already. As I indicated, my plan is to have something out to the rest of the council here sooner than later. And we'll just receive this as filed as information, and I'll have something for it on Tuesday. So I'd ask for council for the policy committee's support.
And I don't think you have to apologize for anything. This is why we have committee, to have these conversations, and it's also a learning experience as well. So don't apologize for anything. Any members of SPC add to the debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question on item 4.1 as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Mr. Sarsfield, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rusamazo, for your presentation as well. And obviously, we'll reach out to you if we need more clarification. And just thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen and go over it all. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Right, moving along here. Just let me open up my agenda here. Members, SPC, we're done with our presentations, but we do have an item, some submissions. First submission is item 5.1, Lori Hatfield, MSTH member, regarding Mom Stop the Harm Overdose Crisis. We have an email that was sent to us, actually was sent to council back in November of last year, and through process it got to this stage in front of us now. Mr. Sarsfield, I do believe Mrs. Hatfield's in the audience. Am I correct?
Yes, you are.
And Ms. Hatfield, obviously you're not making a presentation, but I'm thinking you're here to answer any questions that we may have in regards to what you've sent to us. Am I correct? And feel free to come to the podium at the front there, and just the mic is right in front of you there, so we could all hear you.
Yes, I am here to answer any questions that I'm able to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we have this resolution in front of us, and you're asking for us to ask council to endorse this resolution. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And members of council, SPC, have had this in front of them for quite a while now. Do any members of SPC have a question in regards to what Ms. Hatfield is requesting of us? Councillor Higgin?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for that. I do have quite a few questions here, so please kick me out when you feel if there's somebody else that's in to ask questions, but I do have a few questions that I would like to ask.
Please proceed forward.
Thank you very much. A question that I have, I guess, to Ms. Hatfield, the number one, I guess, OxyContin was marketed as safe, but it killed many people and destroyed communities. It started the opioid crisis. What do you think a so-called safe supply of hydromorphone or other drugs would be any different?
Well, I think the difference in this is that that was pushed out by Big Pharma. They knew that they could make money off of it. They falsely identified it as not being addictive and misled the consumers and the physicians. Now, we are well aware of this. I think it's important to note that we all know that treatment is the answer for addiction, but that treatment can take on many forms, including those with active dependency, where they can have access to something that's safe as opposed to taking something that will kill them. And that is the difference of offering something that is a safe supply as opposed to the illicit drugs that are on the streets.
Okay, because I just noticed OxyContin was marketed as safe as well. So thank you for that. And another question I have, one of the issues with OxyContin was diversion. So I guess meaning that it ended up in the hands of people other than those who it's prescribed to, who have developed addiction. So many overdosed and died. Do you have any evidence to suggest it would be any different with a so-called safe supply of hydromorphone or other drugs?
Well, as far as the distribution of safe supply, those are details that I am not aware of how they would all pan out. That is something that would be taken to a much higher level within the federal government. So I don't know what the restrictions would be on that and how it would be dispersed. But I'm sure it would be given due consideration. We do know what happened with OxyContin, and I'm sure that I guess there's no 100% guarantee.
So there's no plan currently. Then it would be developed after. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, that's not that's just to my knowledge. So I can tell you that that Dr. Elaine Hishka, she's an assistant professor for the U of A on the School of Public Health, and she's also been, since 2019, she's been advising Health Canada on the provision of pharmaceuticals alternatives to illegal street drugs. She's also chair of expert advisory group of Safer Supply and part of the investigative team, Health Team Canada.
Carlson is now joining.
Okay.
And she advised that Health Canada has funded several pilot programs across the country to test out the provision of pharmaceutical alternatives to bridge for people to be from stabilized to healthy living. And these pilot programs have been...
I'm sorry, we have some feedback there. Oh, that's okay. Go ahead, sorry.
So these pilot programs are currently operating in Fredericton, Cape Breton, Dartmouth, Halifax, London, Vancouver, Victoria. There's multiple programs in Toronto, Ottawa, and a new one is planned for Montreal. And this has been in the works since 2019.
Okay, so thank you for that. And Mr. Chair, I don't know if anyone else is in yet. If I do have more, I just wanted to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to speak if they're able.
Proceed forward, Councillor Higgins.
Okay, thank you. So thank you. It was really interesting. So I spent quite a bit of time on this, and I do have a few more questions. And the next one is safe supply programs have been implemented in other parts of the country, as you indicated, Ontario, for example. So in a January 2021 Globe and Mail article, Dr. Vincent Lamb, who directs Toronto's Caderick's Medical Clinic, which specializes in opioid, agonist, and behavioral therapies for substance abuse, stated, "I do not feel that it is wise or a considered approach." Dr. Lamb says, and he's happy to supply examples. The federal government's recent embrace of so-called safe supply hydromorphone, another opioid, has increased quantities and lowered its street price to 1/10 of what it was. Effectively, and this is quoted, effectively what we are doing is subsidizing the trade in prescribed hydromorphone and its use in the illicit markets. Dr. Lamb says he has heard this recent reports of users selling their hydromorphone to buy fentanyl as a result of a government program intended to create an alternative to dying from fentanyl. you have any comment on the statements by Dr. Lamb that safe supply is not advisable?
I don't have any comment at this time. Once again, I'm not an expert in this to answer the particulars of these questions. It is something that you could send me these questions and I can have the experts respond to you on that.
Oh, okay, so there's some understanding that it's still kind of in the works then. So are you wanting us to support something that is, we just don't have the details as of yet? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, I'm sorry, I was under the impression that this was a submission. It's not a presentation. Therefore, I don't have a presentation to provide you. And I can tell you that the City of Edmonton, they had a presentation that one of their councillors, Mum Stop the Harm brought the resolution forward, like we have with the City of Lethbridge, and then one of the councillors took it upon himself to have a presentation prepared where he had 18 professional panelists speak on behalf of that. There is a lot of information in that presentation, and I would be more than happy to send you the link to watch that presentation. These are the experts. Once again, I'm not an expert in this area of the details, but I'm here to answer any questions you have about the resolution that we brought forward.
Okay, thank you. Well, the resolution is brought forward. This is what I got. The questions that I do have is from the resolution that's brought forward. So, okay.
So I would, if you would like, you could send me those questions, and I would be more than happy to be able to find those answers for you.
Okay, so as far as the questions currently right now, you couldn't answer them.
Not into the detail that you're looking for, no, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, maybe I can go through some of the questions, and if you can answer them, that would be great. If not, let's put them to the side, and because there may be some that you may be able to speak to. Is that all right?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, so first of all, so I want to make sure that the conversation is very fluid and transparent, which it is, but I want to make sure, as Ms. Hatfield said, is she's here, and I appreciate the questions as well, Councillor Higgin. Ms. Hatfield is here to answer questions in regards to the request in the resolution. Am I correct on Ms. Hatfield?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's try to keep our questions to the resolution which is in front of us, if possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but that's exactly where I got the questions from.
Oh,
okay. From looking, that's why I have these, and so I was expecting to have the answers as we had someone here to answer the questions. So my apologies if she cannot answer these questions, but there's ones that came out before I feel comfortable in recommending this to council as part of a committee member. I would like to make sure the questions are answered. So maybe I'll just continue, and if for some reason they can't be answered, then we can carry on.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so addiction physicians like Dr. Lamb also spoke about destabilization, which happens when patients who are stable in evidence-based medications like Suboxone and Methadone switch over to safe supply hydromorphone. Their health deteriorates rapidly. Do you have any comment on this, or do you know anything about this?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. Okay,
that's fine. Next question. One of the first safe supply programs in Canada started in London. I'm sure you're very well aware. London, Ontario. Doctors in London have reported harms as a result of prescribing hydromorphone, including hepatitis C. Dr. Sharon Koivu published her findings on these harms. Have you read any of that, or do you have anything to comment on the harms being caused by safe supply?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, it's up to you. I've got 5 or 6 more questions, but do you feel that we should continue on with this, or do you have a better suggestion? As I'm just uncomfortable in recommending this as a member.
I don't want to put, yeah, and I appreciate it. I just want to put Ms. Hatfield in a situation in where she can't answer the questions. And I also want to put her in a position where she has to go and research up some questions that you may have that may be outside of the scope of the resolution. So I just want to let you know that as well. But your questions you're more than welcome to ask these questions because they are germane to the resolution. So I'm just going to move on from you right now to Councillor Carlson, if possible.
Thank you.
Councillor Carlson?
I think
Sorry,
you meant
that's Councillor Kaufman.
Yes.
Councillor Kaufman, the JCs. Sorry about that. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Hadfield, for coming today. Appreciate the motion. Apologize for not seeing it back in November, and I think we were all stuck in budget mode at that time. So sorry that it's taken so long to work its way through the process. Just for context, Mum Stop the Harm is experience-based group, correct? Along the lines of Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Yeah, we are an advocate group of families that have lost loved ones due to overdose. We also support and offer peer support to those families that have a loved one in active addiction and those that are in recovery.
Okay, thank you. And part of the challenge, as I understand it then, is existing policies, which are both provincial and federal in nature, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so the intent of your motion is just to have the federal government be more aware of a need to readdress those policies. What your motion, I believe, does is offers options, but just for consideration. Ultimately, it's up to the federal government to establish a different or new approaches to trying to deal with the opioid crisis in our country. Is that correct?
That's correct. Addiction is, the issues with the crisis are most straining at the local level with communities and families and economies, and the individuals affected themselves. So a collective and united front by many municipalities can have a significant influence on higher levels of government.
Thank you for that. Do you have an approximate number of how many municipalities across, we can start in Alberta or across Canada, have actually
Yes, I do.
Yeah, thank you, if you have that.
So there was two, so these are municipalities that have passed part of the resolution for the federal provincial overdose action plan that includes consideration of decriminalization and legal regulation. So in Newfoundland, there was two, Daniels Harbor and Ferryland. In Quebec, there is 6, Colombière, Saint Valérien, Saint Joseph de Coleraine, Saint Emile de l'Orange, Saint André de Argenteuil, Saint Francois Xavier de Bigre. In Ontario, there's 7, Halton Hills, Cobourg, Thellison, Kealo, Haggerty and Richards, Brantford, Mallorytown, Elizabethtown, Kittley. In Saskatchewan, it's Creighton and Saskatoon. In British Columbia, it was Squamish, Kamloops, Salmo, Victoria, Lake Country, White Rock, Saanich, Central Saanich, Powell River, New Westminster, Pemberton, Smithers, Fruitvale, Ashcroft, Fernie, Courtney, Rossland, Cumberland, Mission, and Trail. 13 municipalities have passed part of the Mum Stop the Harm resolution or have taken other action, and this is as of May 17th. Selwyn, Ontario, Laird, Ontario, North Grenville, Ontario, Perth, Ontario, Delta, BC, Burnaby, BC, Oliver, BC, North Vancouver, BC, Prince George, BC, Oak Bay, BC, Edmonton, Alberta, District of West Vancouver, BC, Brockville, Ontario. And 4 municipalities or municipality bodies have passed their own resolutions, which is Montreal, Quebec, Vancouver, BC, Niagara Regional Council, Ontario, and St. Catharines, Ontario.
Thank you. Do you know why those last 4 passed their own? Was it a different approach or different consideration?
So Montreal City Council passed a motion calling on the federal government to decriminalize the simple possession of illicit drugs nationally. That move was applauded by harm reduction groups who are urging Montreal to also follow Vancouver's lead and apply for formal decriminalization exemption. There is a source for that I would be more than pleased to send you.
I can find that myself, thank you.
Okay, in Vancouver, councillors in Vancouver have voted unanimously to ask the federal government to decriminalize possession of small amounts of illicit drugs. City staff will now write to federal officials, including the Ministers of Health and Justice, seeking an exemption from the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. In Niagara Regional Council, after bouncing between the full council and committee, Niagara's regional councillors have voted narrowly to ask the federal government to study the decriminalization of possession of all drugs. And in St. Catharines, Ontario, St. Catharines is adding its support to the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police effort to decriminalize personal possession of illicit drugs in the hope of focusing on treatment of people suffering from addictions rather than arresting them. So as you can see, municipalities have taken what we have brought forward and they've tailored it to what they are comfortable with.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kaufman. Deputy Mayor Campbell.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this before us. I just wondered, have you reached out to our Member of Parliament and has there been positive response to her?
To Rachel Harder?
Yes.
No, I have not reached out to Rachel Harder.
Or any of our MLAs as well?
So on a personal level, members of Mom Stop the Harm have done their own petitions and forward them to the federal government. I believe it was, we were directed, sorry, if you can just bear with me for a second. I think we were directed by Patty Hadju that that we bring this forward to our municipalities and that they bring that forward to the federal government. When we did our own personal petitions, those were sent to members of Parliament. However, that was the option of the member, if I understand correctly, it was the option of the Member of Parliament to present those petitions to the federal government, meaning that we could provide them to our members of Parliament, but it was up to them if they wanted to bring that forward in the House of Commons. Therefore, we were selective in choosing which Member of Parliament to bring that forward so that they would actually be read.
So you're thinking there's more power in getting a resolution from a municipality, I'm guessing.
Yes, if a municipality brings something forward, there's more likelihood of that being heard in the federal government.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Higgin.
Thank you. I do have more questions, but it may be difficult to obviously get the answers. So I'm just wondering if I heard you correctly. I just want to make sure. So with it being a federal thing, you have not spoke with the Member of Parliament that we have in our local municipality, Ms. Harder?
No, I have not spoken with Ms. Harder.
Is there plans to do that? I'm just wondering here, being that she's the representative for, for federal government here right. in Lethbridge.
Yeah, and let me just grab this. Okay, so in the overdose crisis resolution at the bottom, that was sent to you, it says to send the resolution to Patty Hadju, Minister of Health, and it also says to send a copy to your Member of Parliament. So if you were to bring the motion forward, that is who this motion would go to, the Minister of Health and Rachel Harder.
Okay, I just thought that there may be some communication beforehand. That's all right. So with it being a health issue as well, and provinces are dealing with health, have you contacted the Minister's office for the province to advocate on behalf of Mom Stops the Harm? Have they been approached? The province been approached on this?
So I do not know if our provincial lead has. I know we have been in contact with the Minister of Health. And that is a different playing field when it comes to harm reduction and the UCP government. I don't know if there was a meeting and what the outcome of that was.
Okay, so they haven't been or that you know of, haven't been contacted or had the opportunity to speak to this or advocate on your behalf by the sounds of it.
That's correct. That I know of. That's what you're correct on, and that I don't know.
Okay, I'm just looking at, levels of government being, you come to the municipality and it, the provincial government supersedes that, and obviously the federal government. So I thought start at the top with, Ms. Harder being the representative from Parliament here, and then if not the provincial government, but that has not been the case as of yet.
No, because this resolution is being asked to be forwarded to the federal government, the Minister of Health.
All right, thank you. I do have more questions, but I will pop out as I just don't know if I'm going to get the replies. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hagan. Looking at my docket here, I have no other members who have questions, and I know Ms. Hatfield's just here to answer questions. So seeing no other questions, I'm going to move on to the resolution, unless a member of the committee does have a suggestion or a question. So I'm going to read out the resolution as we have it, and we'll see if this needs to be changed or actually just adopted. So I'll read it out. This is item 5.1. Thank you, Ms. Hatfield, as well, for your answering our questions as well. This is the Mom Stop to Harm Overdose Crisis 5.1, and it's on your screen. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee received this report as information. Now, this is just, there's going to be no action taken forward by this resolution. Is there a member of the SPC that would like this to be changed, or is this how you would like to be presented? And if so, who would like to sponsor it? Mr. Hagan?
I will sponsor it as receiving it as information. Thank you.
Okay. Members of the committee? Obviously, if this was passed, then my question is to you, Councillor Hagan. This would obviously not go to council for an endorsement in fulfilling the request of Ms. Hatfield. Am I correct?
That is correct. I'm not prepared to do that with what the questions that I've had currently. So just receive it as information. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I'm going to entertain debate or discussion on 5.1 now that it's been signed off by Councillor Hagan. Members of the SPC, does anyone have any questions, first of all, on regards to 5.1? Seeing none, would you like to introduce debate, Councillor Hagan?
I'll see for closing. Thank you.
Debate? Seeing none, I'll let you close, Councillor Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I indicated earlier, I did have some questions, but I understand that it's, without the answers, I'm just not prepared to recommend this to council with that. So I will call for the vote.
The vote has been called on 5.1 as presented on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sarsfield. Going into my agenda here.
Carlson is now exiting.
Okay, just let me open this up here. I think we're going on next to, is it Mr. Fox? Are you speaking on behalf of, sorry, my mind is correct. Mr. Who am I speaking? Who am I thinking of? Why am I?
Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, Ms. Marty Thompson. I do believe you told us at the agenda committee that you'd be speaking on behalf of the SDWS. So, and this is just a brief update to keep us in the loop of what's happening to date. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah, it was originally going to be a verbal update, but at the last committee meeting, we thought we better get something in writing, and that was the direction from the SPC. So we will be bringing these forward. They will be at a late edition just because things are moving fast enough that we have to, it was changed up until yesterday when we added it on. So please excuse us for the time, but I can answer any questions you have on it. We are moving forward quickly with the working group number 1. The agenda is set and the second meeting will be happening next week. And we're trying to get everybody on the same foundation with the same understanding of all the terms that are used in planning and what the city's role is. And also, and that's the social service integration group. So there was good discussion at the last one, and we came away with some questions. They're coming back with, they're dealing with the terms of reference and making sure that they own the terms of reference as we move forward. So the next session will be happening next week, as I stated, and it'll be more focused on around planning, and then the final sort of facilitated before we pick the chairs and have it moving forward will be on the land use in different areas that social services exist currently and where they could be to get that conversation going. The second working group is the Clean and Safe working group, and we're working with LPS on setting this up, where they're going to be making sure to have an important part on this. And we have dates out to the committee members, and we're just trying to finalize that, and that meeting will take place in the next couple of weeks. We've also sent out the starting of to the Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy Phase 1 group, an email to start the discussion about forming the task force and how that's going to proceed. So we don't have dates concrete on that yet, but we'll be bringing that forward as soon as we do. And if there's any questions on any of these committees or the task force, please ask.
Thank you, Mr. Fox, for that update. And please extend a thank you to Ms. Thompson as well for the hard work and his team has been doing on this as well. Members of the committee, do you have any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Fox, for that update. And I'm guessing, obviously, you'll be continually keeping us in the loop of what's going on here. If not the SBC, also council as well. Correct. Yeah, we'll be bringing forward highlights continuous until the chairs are formed. Once the chairs of the groups they'll actually be reporting. The 2 chairs will come and report into the SBC and make sure that you're understanding what's happening. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fox. I have the following resolutions. Item 5.2, Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy Update. That being a verbal update by Mr. Fox. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee received this report as information. Can I get someone to move this?
So moved. Campbell?
Deputy Mayor Campbell, thank you. I guess, obviously, I don't think we have much questions because otherwise we would ask questions on this resolution. I'll call the question on this. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Fox. Mr. Sarsfield, that passed unanimously. And I have one more resolution here. This is the adjournment, that we now adjourn the meeting of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee until Thursday, June 10th, 2021. Can I get someone to sign off on that? Councillor Hagan? Deputy
Absolutely, Mayor. I will.
Thank you. And obviously I don't think there's much debate on that. I'll call the question. Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for members of council for joining us as well as members of the SBC, members of administration, and thank you most importantly to Mr. Sarsfield. Thank you, Mr. Sarsfield.
Thank you.
We're now adjourned.